7 years ago, I decided to make the biggest life decisions ever to move to South Korea. There were a lot of highs, but there were equally as many lows, but I wouldn't have had it any other way. So if you are planning to move abroad or you're kind of on the fence about it, maybe my story and my experience will help you make that decision a little bit easier. If you're new here, my name is Yvonne. I'm currently living in South Korea. I do have a lazy eye, so that's why I'm not focused on the camera. And I've been meaning to share my story for quite some time now because there are so many things that nobody tells you when you move abroad, whether that be just for maybe a semester abroad or even to immigrate. And I'm hoping that my story will help shed light into any types of questions that you may have when you are considering moving to a different country. As I've mentioned, there were a lot of highs, but equally the same amount of lows. And it has been the biggest life decision I've ever made. I would have changed it because it has made me into such a different person. I didn't realize coming into this whole experience that the person who I was when I left Canada is not the same person who I am now. I have been challenged, my boundaries has been pushed. I have to learn how to adapt, be resourceful. And I knew this coming in, but I didn't know into what magnitude it would change me. I already have cat hair in my tea, oh my goodness. A bit of background, I was 26 when I decided to move to South Korea. And the reason why I wanted to move abroad was because I wasn't in a relationship and I was in between jobs. There was really nothing that was tying me down, and one of my dreams was to live abroad for at least a year, only because I felt like I have learned so much in Canada already. I've been through a lot of jobs, a lot of career changes, met so many different types of people, and I felt like just moving abroad for me to expand my horizons was the next step for me. The reasons why I chose South Korea is a whole different video on its own. If you want to know more about that, feel free to let me know. But I was 26 at the time, turning 27, and I felt like this was going to be the perfect moment for me to make that jump. I came to Korea February 2019, and even though I felt like I knew a lot about the world because I've been through so many different experiences, I was still very naive. Looking back, I didn't know anything. I didn't even know the language. And I would say that I have changed so much now that I'm looking back at myself. When you move to a different country, what they don't tell you is how much you have to set your boundaries early. Oh my goodness, the amount of times that I have been taken advantage of and having to really advocate for myself has been intense. I'm not the type of person to advocate for my boundaries. I'm very much a people pleaser, especially back then. And having to advocate for myself, especially in a different language, which I wasn't familiar with, was hard. However, there were so many things that I learned along the way, not only about the world around me, but especially about myself, that it has made the experience truly worth it. Fair warning, I didn't really plan to have a structure to this, but I will try to talk about the good things first, and then we'll dive into the ugly. I came to Korea February 2019. I was 26, turning 27, and I was so new to this world. I have never set foot into this country. I don't even know the language. I actually learned the language while living here through self-study and other modes, but I was so naive. Now that I'm looking back, living abroad has pushed my boundaries, has challenged me to the point where I am a completely different person in so many different ways, more so than I would have ever expected. One of the most amazing parts of my experience of living abroad was meeting so many different people from all walks of life. I met so many people from different cultures, different backgrounds, who grew up in a different country from me, and I felt like it was a beautiful experience to be able to learn so much from them. But at the same time, you also learn your boundaries when it comes to friendships and what you value in a friendship as well. The first few months is like a honeymoon phase where everything is new, everything is exciting, and you want to experience everything that you can because you're in a different environment, no parental supervision, everybody is your friend. And I remember my first year, I was friends with so many different types of people because I came in with this group of people that we were training to be English teachers for. It was amazing. I had the best time in my first year, but then I started to realize that we are in our own bubble. Just because we were all speaking English and we had the ability to communicate with each other easily in a country that speaks Korean, It was easier for us to be in a bubble, and that could be really great, but also really bad as well. Great because, again, like we have all these people around us that we can connect with. At the same time, it felt like some friendships were very surface level. I'll be very honest about that. Just because we speak the same language, it doesn't mean that we're gonna be great friends. And I've learned that the hard way because I found it really hard for myself to be able to maintain friendships because we didn't really share anything else, any commonalities besides the fact that we could speak English. When it comes to friendships while living abroad, the reality is that not everybody is gonna stay as long as you plan to. Some people who plan to stay here for a year or two, they end up staying for longer, and that also happens vice versa, where a lot of people who plan to settle in a different country decide that maybe after a year or two they're pretty much finished and they want to go back home. What ends up happening that nobody really tells you about is how emotionally taxing it can be to try to maintain relationships with other people. For some people, living abroad is just a temporary destination for them, where for other people it's going to be their permanent home. You never know what's going to happen, and because of this constant in and out revolving door of friends, it becomes so emotionally taxing to meet a new person, have them go back to their home country and try to find other groups of friends. So this constant cycle of trying to create and build new relationships, it does wear down on you by a lot. After 7 years of living in South Korea, I would say that I don't really talk to many people, not because I'm trying to close myself off, but a lot of my original friend groups have gone home already. The people, the foreigners who are here in Korea, most of them are quite new, and so we are in different phases of our life where they're still in the honeymoon phase, but I've already experienced everything else. I don't have that same excitement. I don't want to go out to all these clubs, these bars, X, Y, and Z, and so we have different interests. I have two main friends that I talk to constantly, and they have been in Korea longer than I have, and they get it, you know, like they understand the struggle of living in Korea long term, but they also understand that sometimes like we just need our space. I feel like I have become a lot more introverted while living in Korea, and that has been something that I have been trying to remedy. However, it is hard because as much as I want to meet other people, going back to what I mentioned about being emotionally taxed, I get tired very easily when I meet new people now. I wish this wasn't the case. I remember back when I was in Canada, I was a lot more extroverted. It was easier for me to create conversations, meet other people, and just, you know, like hang out with people if I wanted to. But now it's become more of a chore. What people don't tell you when you live abroad is that the support group that you make in a different country is going to look very different than what you had back home. So the intensity, the depth that you guys go into when you guys meet and talk to each other is going to be very different. This also carries into my next point, which is your relationships with the friends that you have back home is going to change. It changes a lot more the longer you stay in a different country. I don't talk to my friends back home as much anymore because we all have our own different lives now. They all have their own careers, their jobs, their relationships, and that is to be expected when you are becoming an adult. Because we are literally in two different worlds, it's hard to relate to each other in terms of everyday life and problems and things like that. For me, it literally feels like I have one foot in and one foot out when it comes to the type of worlds that I'm in. One foot in South Korea, so I have my friend base here in Korea, but I also have my friend base in Canada, and the things that we talk about and the depth that we go into is quite different. But the main thing is that my relationship with these people have changed. I wouldn't say negatively, it has just been different. And that's just because we don't talk as often and we don't talk about the same things anymore because I'm no longer in the same country as them and I don't share the same experiences that they do. My favorite thing has to be the fact that when you are in a different country, different culture, having to experience a different language and trying to survive, you are pushed to the limit. Oh my gosh, I have been challenged so many times. My boundaries, my buttons have been pushed, and you learn how to adapt. And this is something that you cannot learn when you are staying in the same spot that you've always been growing up. Not only have I learned to be more resourceful because access to information is not going to be as easy as it was back home, I've become a lot more resilient in the face of trials and tribulations because you will experience those things when you are living in a different country, especially when you have to survive using a language that is not your native language. Cutting back to first year me, struggling with Korean, not knowing what to do and not knowing whether or not people were scamming me or trying to pull a fast one on me, you learn how to advocate for yourself. You also learn what your boundaries are and how to enforce them. Through this entire experience, this is how I've changed so much as a person. I'm no longer people pleasing. I have learned to advocate for myself a lot better and to have a lot more self-trust in myself. But also, I would say that The most important thing is I have learned to really defend for myself if I ever needed to. There has been so many cases where I was scammed and I had to fight back in Korean. And there were other moments where I had to advocate for myself because no one would do it but me. That's a skill that I had to quickly learn. You also learn how to be very adaptable. Things are very different in different countries, obviously, right? Culture, the systems, public transportation. You learn how to be resourceful and how to adapt to the various changes that you're not used to. And I think that makes somebody really strong, but also really brave to be able to challenge themselves, to be able to face these trials, these challenges that they've never faced before, and to continue doing those things until things become comfortable. We are constantly faced with discomfort, but when we get to a point of comfort, I would say that that is such an amazing experience to have because you learn so much about yourself and what you're able to handle. And if you're not able to handle it, you learn how to go about it in a way where you can handle those things. The amount of times I had to tell people to F off or to decline or have to correct them on something because they think that they know more than I do because I don't speak the language, it forces me to have a lot more self-trust. But also, I realize how much of a strong person I can become if I really learn how to defend for myself. The person who I was back then would never. I was a major people pleaser. I didn't have any boundaries. I didn't know how to say no to people. I realized that after everything that I've been through, all those things were holding me back from not only reaching my true potential, but for me, living a very healthy life. This is why I mentioned that this has been the best decision that I've ever made for myself because I didn't have any opportunities to do any of these things, to learn any of these big life lessons until I moved to a different country. And I can assure you that if you choose to make this leap, you're gonna learn so much about yourself, but also you're gonna learn some very valuable life lessons that you're gonna go through, and you're gonna learn how to adapt, how to problem solve, and basically you're gonna go through this period of self-discovery, and it's gonna be amazing and beautiful. Even though I had to go through a lot of crap situations, I learned from them, and it has made my world and my perspective a lot more richer. And again, I would not have changed that for anything in this world. Looking back now, the version of who I was before, I'm not very proud of her, but I am very proud of how far I've come and the journey that it took for me to get here. You learn so many new skills when you're living abroad because no longer are you in the same comfort zone that you used to be in. Now you have to go out into this world and you have to talk to different people, whether that be in English or a different language. You have to adapt to situations that you're not familiar with, and you're constantly being hit with unfamiliarity, new situations, new experiences, and new information. And what that does to you is that you start to realize what you're able to handle and what you're willing to do to get to a point where you feel comfortable doing it or to get what you need to get done. The experiences you have abroad versus the experiences you have back home is going to be very different. What I mean by that, if it wasn't obvious enough, is that cooking in a new country versus cooking at home, completely different. The experience is different when you have to look for your ingredients, have to find the right ingredients, finding the grocery store, finding a grocery store that has the products that you want. It comes with its own unique challenges that you didn't realize that you had to face. You think that, if you want to cook a certain recipe, just go to the grocery store and get your items, that's it. But you start to realize that, not everybody carries a product you wanted, or this product is not available in this country. So you learn how to adapt, you learn how to be resourceful, and you learn how to navigate the systems in place in this new country. And it's amazing. I don't know where this video is going, but I wanted to warn you that when you are living abroad, it's so important for you to learn the language, at least to a basic level where you can get by, because things become a lot easier where you can communicate with the locals, especially in an emergency. I told you that I have gotten scammed so many times because I didn't know the language and I didn't know how to advocate for myself. But after being able to get to a level where I can have conversations with people and be able to have the confidence to advocate and defend for myself, I don't get those types of situations where I feel scammed or I'm being taken advantage of. Let's talk about the things that people don't tell you when you move abroad, especially for an extended period of time. One of those things has to do with your relationships and how different they will become the further and the longer that you stay away from home. This includes your immediate family and your friends. I didn't realize how older my parents have gotten since I've been back. But also with my friends, we're still friends. It's just that we connect less. We don't talk about the same things anymore just because we're in two different worlds now. We also have our own lives, careers, families to take care of, as well as time zones. Although we are still friends, we're not as connected and we're not as close as we once were. And this is a reality that I had to slowly face. It might be hard, especially if you feel very connected with your support group. This also means that you have to find your own support group in this new country, because you're not going to be able to fulfill your emotional needs with your friends back home. You have to learn to adapt, especially when it comes to time zone issues, as well as trying to find people with similar life experiences. You may also start to realize that the friends that you once had back home may not be the same people that you want in your social circle if you do decide to come back, especially if you have been away for a long time. Whether that may be due to changes in lifestyle, it could also be due to the fact that you know what your boundaries are and you know what you want in a friendship, and your support group that you once had before may not be fulfilling those emotional needs that you have now. I have met a lot of people who've gone through this where they're gone from the country for a year or two, and they start to realize that the friends that they once had can't be the same type of people that they bring into their lives when they go back home, because maybe like they need a different type of friendship. Or maybe they realize that the friendships that they had was all surface level and they need a greater depth in their platonic relationships. A lot of us who has been abroad for quite some time have this experience where we feel like our lives have kind of stood still in time, where our families back home has kind of continued on in an upward motion. That is to say that like it feels like we haven't really progressed much in life, whereas our family and friends back home, they're moving up in their careers, they're starting families, X, Y, and Z. It seems like they are hitting these life milestones where we are not. And that scares a lot of people. I generally do believe that everybody has their own time and you do not need to follow a pre-written script, like have a job, have a home, have a family by X amount of time or at X amount of ages. But some people do feel that way. The hardest thing about being away for so long is figuring out if you can re-assimilate into the society that you've left. Now that I have been here for 7 years, I'm not sure if I can go back to Canada as the same person who understands these cultural norms that we once had. When I went back to Canada, I was so stuck in my head about like bowing to the people and accepting things with both hands, because that's what we do here in Korea, right? But it seems that like those mannerisms still stuck with me when I went back to visit. And it makes me wonder, like, am I able to readjust back if I've been home for enough time? And I feel like we all go through this process of reverse culture shock. But what I've also heard from other people who have reassimilated back to their home countries after a bit of time abroad is that they also go through a period of depression. It's like they are mourning the loss of their previous life. That is something that we don't talk about enough. How do you cope with that feeling of the fact that you lived a completely different life before and now you're back to where you started? And I would say that not a lot of people recover from it. The depression stage is so strong or so long for them that they eventually just return back to their new country. That is something that I feel like people need to know about and what is to come. If you guys do decide to stay abroad for a very long time and to come back later on, these things might happen to you or you might experience these things. It's very normal to feel very emotional, but some people take it very, very intensely. So just be aware that moving abroad has so many benefits. And I still do encourage you to move abroad if you have the chance, because it is a luxury to be able to do so. But it does come with its own effects and consequences, either emotionally or psychologically. Again, like these are the things that I wish that people had told me before I moved here, especially for a long time. I didn't plan to stay here for this long. I was able to raise my 2 cats here, have a partner, and again, I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm not sure if Korea is a place for me permanently, but the experiences that I've had here, the people that I've met here have been life-changing. And I hope that if you do decide to move abroad, for however long that may be, that you also grow positively into the type of person that you wish to be and that you have an amazing experience outside of your comfort zone. But that is what I have for you today. I know this is very long-winded and had no structure, but I just felt like yapping, to be honest. But if you found this video helpful, if you really enjoy it, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye-bye.